Please welcome this next actor, an American actor and producer known for her roles on the ABC drama series Family, 5-time Emmy Award nominee with one of her nominations coming for playing the title role in the 1992 TV film A Woman Scorned. Please welcome Elyse Keaton herself, Meredith Baxter.
Hello.
Hi, Meredith. How you doing? Thanks for being with us today.
I'm stoked to be here. This is a new experience for me.
It's very cool. Very cool. We're glad to virtually have you here. Let's bring out next up American television, movie, and stage actor and comedian. We know him, and I personally love him specifically from the Tremors film franchise as Burt Gummer. But I grew up with him first as Steven Keaton from the sitcom Family Ties. That's what we're here to talk about today. Please welcome Michael Gross to the virtual stage.
Yay!
Hello, great to be here.
Thank
Hi,
you
honey.
both for joining us. My gosh, how long has it been since both of you saw each other before all this went down?
How long, Meredith? Probably not too long. Has it been a year?
It's been close to a year. The last time, I think it was in April, actually, when we finished the last Love Letters.
Meredith and I have been performing in several venues across the United States in a production of Love Letters together. It's a great excuse for us to, number one, do a great play, and maybe more importantly, just to connect with each other and have a week or two of silliness together on the road.
And that's really what it amounts to.
I know you started, it was 2018 or 2019, you started doing them periodically. And I know there were some scheduled for 2020, and obviously due to everything that's been going on and some other factors, there was probably one, maybe it was actually before everything, early in February. Is there, and I wanted to chat about this at the end, but I'd love to even talk about it a little now. Is there any sort of hope on the horizon of bringing Love Letters back once we're able to be in a theater again?
That would certainly be my hope. Go ahead, Michael. You have something.
We're hoping the people who were booking us actually ran into some health problems, and so our booking agents, and so they've kind of taken a vacation right now, even before COVID, and so we need to get together and reorganize some new way of getting on the road, because we do it well. I'll speak for myself. I adore her, and
I thought you were going to say something else.
You don't have to say something nice in return if you don't want to. No, it's just always a pleasure to work with her, because the beauty of having known each other for something like 37 years, more than half my life, is that we know each other's work very well. We can anticipate each other's work. It's such fun. It's such fun.
Yeah, I'd have to mirror that.
We're like two old vaudevillians. Say again, honey?
No, well, exactly that. It's the sweetness of knowing what's going on over here on the other side of the stage when I don't even have to look at him. And I just, and the audience is laughing, and I go, oh yeah, he's doing that. Oh, he's milking that now. Okay. And I just love it.
We have fun. And we have a great time.
That's so awesome. And obviously that chemistry came from your performances together on Family Ties. Fans watching out there, I'm going to kick things off with a few of my own questions. But then if you do have a question for either or both of these amazing performers, go ahead and tag at Wizard World or at Wizard World Virtual in the comments, and we'll get to as many fan questions as possible. But I would like to start just with I always find it interesting how projects come together from casting and writing, and then, who gets picked and who doesn't get picked and things like that. You both were in the industry already. Meredith, we mentioned the series Family before Family Ties. And then Michael, obviously a bunch of TV movies and films. And I wonder, I'd just love to hear both your stories about then how that led to the ultimate casting process and being selected to be on Family Ties, the show.
Meredith, why don't you start? You were the first member of that cast to be chosen, correct?
Actually, I think Tina was. I may be wrong, but I somehow think that Tina was.
I did not know that. Okay.
Do you know Gary Goldberg?
Right.
He created the show. He and his wife Diana were at my house for dinner. Had nothing to do with me. The fellow I was married to was hosting them for dinner because of a project they were talking about. And 2 weeks later, I got a call from Gary saying, "Hey, would you like to come in and talked to us about this project. They were offering it to me at that time. So it was thrilling because I really adored him. He was formidable and funny and so talented. That's how it happened. And I said, I did not dither. I said yes right away.
So you and Tina were the first people cast. I somehow thought you, all these years later, I thought you were the first person cast that was being built around you. Well, I'm sure it was built around you, but I mean, I didn't know Tina was cast first.
I may be wrong, but I think so.
You're probably wrong.
Well, if past is any indication, yes, you're right.
Past is prelude.
Well, so Meredith, Michael, I want to get to your story too, obviously. But so since obviously we were saying the project was mostly built around your character and you being there, Meredith, were you doing a lot of the reads then up front with the other actors as they were bringing them in, or was that completely sort of done on the side?
Well, in different projects I have participated, but in this, no, I had nothing to do with it.
Interesting. Yeah,
I did not set eyes on Meredith until we went to a photography session for the upfront. What do they call it? The
credits.
The opening credits of the show. We met for the first time. I was cast separately. I had never set eyes on her, nor she on me, or the deal wouldn't have worked out.
I don't know that we met. We didn't meet at the Arboretum. We met. I remember meeting you on the stage at KCE, whatever that place was we first taped. Because I remember you walking in.
Oh, you're right. We didn't know. Yeah. Okay. That's right. But I was the last person cast in the show. I think everybody else had been set, and they were still looking for someone. I was cast out of New York City. I was put on tape back there, and as the way Gary David Goldberg, our late esteemed producer, used to put it, I was actually chosen by his daughter. He was looking at a number of tapes that had been mailed to him, and just popping in these old in the days of VCR, popping in those tapes, and his daughter and I was doing my audition, and his daughter said, "Oh, I like that one, Daddy." So Shanna chose me, and to this day she credits my career with her choice, and she still insists I give her 10% of whatever income I make. So there you go.
It all went down from there. It's so interesting when you mentioned, Michael, briefly about meeting most of the cast for the first time for that opening credits shot, which is such an iconic part of the show. Like, we all remember the family portrait and the song, and that had to be interesting, meeting everybody and having to act, right? Like you were a loving family, like right at day one.
It's what
I've always done that.
Yeah. It's what actors do all the time, isn't it? That instant, that moment and that's where casting really comes in. That's where casting is a charm, because we were blessed with some wonderful people.
Yes.
Michael Fox, Justine Bateman, Tina, Meredith, myself. It was just so perfect. And that's just gold. And there's no guarantee that's going to happen.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'd love to talk a little bit. So some of the comments that are coming through from folks watching are like, "Hey, it's my TV parents. Hi, Mom and Dad." And you mentioned the creator. Oh my gosh, I'm like drawing a blank right now.
Gary David Goldberg.
Gary, of course. Gary, he was had his daughter pick you as the father. We really, speaking as someone personally who grew up with the show, you know what I mean, watching it. You really did become American, and there was a dearth of family shows, sitcoms out there, but it was something about Family Ties, at least, that stuck out to me. And you really became America's parents. We were following along with you. Was there ever a realization of that, or a moment where you thought like, oh my gosh, like we're imparting our values now upon like American children, at that time? I don't know.
Meredith, what about you?
No, I never had any global perspective of what we were doing at all. I was just so in it at the time. Michael, did you have any sense?
I had a sense when it took a while, but when I began getting letters from kids,
saying,
"Oh yeah,
I wish my dad were a little like you."
Wow.
or I don't have a father. And I started to think to myself, we were popular because American families were not doing all that well sometimes. And that we know the divorce rate was high, and it always has been. And there were absentee parents. And so I think I began to get a sense from fan mail that there was a need out there. There was a crying need from people who had better parents than what they had. And I always had to emphasize to them, wait, I'm sure your parents are doing as good as they can. They don't have 8 comic writers working for them the way we do. I don't make this stuff up. I'm not that wise in real life. My own children wish I were as nice as that man they saw on television. And so we had good comic writers. We had wonderful, humanistic, dear people who understood the human condition and could render it comically and well week after week. And I just repeated their lines.
And something else I think that contributed to it, I can't compare us to other shows because I didn't watch other shows,
Sure.
but I knew what it was like for me on the set. And I really felt, I think we felt so connected.
Yeah.
I think I think we really adored each other. I think we had a lot of respect for what each of us brought to the table. And when I think people saw that connection, when Michael would just make me laugh so much in something. So there's such a warmth and commitment and sense of generosity. We never felt we were competing with each other during our scenes or anything. I wanted for them, and I think they wanted for me. And so you don't feel that in families all the time. There's a lot of bickering.
We liked each other. And as I say, and I think it's so important these days, particularly where there's so much division in this country. We lived in a time in the 80s where there was a strong Republican administration run by Ronald Reagan, who, anyway, a lot of people disavow his faith because he wasn't tough enough. He didn't draw lines in the sand the way some people do these days. Ronald Reagan was capable of compromise, as strong as his conservative bona fides were. And I look back at a time when we had a child who was extremely conservative. We were liberal parents, yep. And we made it. It was a world in which people could disagree greatly, and yet people were not sent up to bed without dessert or dinner. We could disagree and we loved each other at the same time. And I think America could take a cue from that right now. We work better as a team.
Yeah, no. And that was what was so beautiful about the show was, like you said, you mentioned, Michael, it was that liberalism versus conservatism. But at the end of the day, we were family. You were family. You know what I mean? And you were willing to listen to, open yourselves to listen to the other side. And that's why the show was so great, because it represented both sides. I love hearing the story about just Alex's character, Michael J. Fox's character, that was originally supposed to, be kind of not making fun of conservatism, but you know what I mean? Like poking a jab, it was the juxtaposition of the parents versus the kids. And he became such an endearing character to both sides, you know what I mean? And both sides loved him for, opening the conversation and, having it be respectful on both ends.
Exactly. And I think one of the, Meredith, you've heard me say this before, but I think one of the great hallmarks of the Michael J. Fox character was his conservatism, but it was conservatism with a heart.
Yes.
Those 1,000 points of light that George W. Bush talked about many years ago, and a compassionate conservatism, if you will. And his heart, he was a cutthroat character whose heart ultimately always won over his head. And it was fun to watch that conflict each week, which is why I think he was such a beautiful character, because the conflict was so interior between his hard-headed conservatism and the heart he had inherited from his parents.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the reasons that he was a breakout character too, because the audiences came to know him, and they'd have a certain situation come up, and that if he was going to be pivotal in them, they knew where he was going. And they just wanted to watch it happen. They couldn't wait to watch it happen because they wrote him beautifully and he played it beautifully, and he didn't disappoint.
Yeah, amazing. And what's incredible is the lasting power that the show has had. I mean, my gosh, when it lasted for the 7 seasons that it did, but it's continued on syndication. Obviously, on Nick at Night, TV Land, but then like Disney Channel. I think you can still watch it today, streaming on all the various services.
Yeah.
This is a fan question specifically from Chris Kylander watching, and we touched on it briefly, but why do you think Family Ties has continued to hold up today? A sentiment from Chris. Watched it recently, still love it. Such a great show and beautiful performances by both of you. And I'm just curious why you think that it's still so popular and relevant these days, and why we kind of harken back to it.
I'd say for very much what we were talking about. Because of my experience and what people have said to me in the mail that I got was they tuned in for the love. They knew that was a loving place to be. Yeah. And I think we need a shot of that periodically. So
there's nothing as universal as family. I absolutely agree. I always say to people, my mother was the first woman I ever knew. My father was the first man I ever knew. And those are things that are universal.
Awesome. We talked a lot. The show is obviously a lot about family. It's in the title. We've talked about it a ton. Working with child actors or young actors. This is a question from Taylor, S-Taylor111, watching on Twitch. Given your years of experience coming in from the business, what kind of advice did you have for the kids on the show? And how was it, working with these upcoming child actors?
Oh.
Meredith, you had the most experience in front of the camera. I had been a stage person, so specifically in front of the camera. How did you address that? What did you say to them?
Well, I wouldn't say it to the kids themselves, because I did work with a lot of children, and some of them were wonderful. Some of them were little automatons, which scared me. Some of them didn't want to be doing this. They didn't want to be here, and their parents were gung-ho that they become actors and expand their personality and their following, which I thought was terrible. I would tell the parents, find another, let them join a baseball team or something, get them in Little League, get them out of here. I just didn't see it as a place for a child so much.
I didn't find myself offering a lot of advice for 2 reasons. Number one,
no one asked you.
Nobody asked my opinion. They all went, whatever he does, do the opposite. Michael J. Fox was always older than he looked, so he was in many ways a young adult. He had experience on television before in Canada for the most part. And obviously he was had this roll by the tail the minute he stepped in. Justine Bateman's father was an acting coach, and so he was there. Tina Yothers' mother was always there, and Tina was, it was just they already had full families. I never felt as if they needed me as a parental figure. They had strong people in their lives. Michael J. Fox's parents were just adorable human beings who came to visit us periodically over time. It was great to see them. They lived in Canada and came down. And so I never felt as if I were standing in for somebody's parents, because they had good, strong parental figures and seemed to know what they were doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's obviously, as you mentioned, Meredith, that's not always the case, with child actors in the business, which is a sad truth and a sad reality. So you can always tell the shows that are successful are the ones that have the strong families already supporting them. You know what I mean? Or hopefully, we hope.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit.
I just lost your audio, Mike.
And they sort of lost the animated you.
Yes, Mike's screen is frozen. Meredith, you want to talk about anything else at the moment while we're waiting for him? No, seriously. No, I must say the whole thing of parents. The kids seemed very accomplished. They were naturals at what they were doing. Sometimes people will ask me. I mean, certainly Michael did such extraordinary work on the show, but people will ask me sometimes, they say, who's one of your favorites? And in some ways, it was Justine Bateman, who was the furthest from her character in real life than anybody else. She's whip smart.
Yeah.
Brilliant young lady. And she played this mall rat. And so I always thought that I always credited her with her character going the furthest afield from whom she actually was, the person she actually was. And
I think in some way it might have cost her too, emotionally. Just I think not that it's something I've really talked to her about, but I thought that was hard for her because she was such a smart girl.
Oh my God!
And was playing someone who wasn't stupid, but was just really very shallow and did not reach very far.
I think she looked to you for that.
Well, I was a good model for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for noticing.
Well, I know Scott Valentine also, right, had not an issue, but like had a bit of struggle with Nick too. I mean, so hilarious in the role, but coming in, and just having to play that dumb character again and kind of being ribbed on. It's got to be tough to just like be the butt of the joke in a series,
Oh, he was wonderful. I don't know. The introduction of Nick was huge for me because up until that time, and I think Meredith and I both had this issue for a while. We were generically wonderful, nice, supportive parents, and liberal, accepting, and all that sort of thing. And Scott, the character of Nick, gave me someone to hate, which was really sort of wonderful because it really put me in that role of the father for whom, number one, no young man is ever going to be good enough for your daughter. And then you bring in this guy. And you bring in somebody who's even worse than that. And it was the perfect comic foil. So I was forever grateful for that young man coming in, that character to come in. And Scott was a wonderful guy and just the sweetest, able. It's tough to walk into an established show as a new character, but by God, he took the bull by the horns and off he went.
I know. And to play a character that's so big, that's so outside and not necessarily someone who draws your respect and admiration. It's just, he's a bit of a buffoon in some ways, but it was always with a reason. We always got to play something off it and learn something in the end. And usually it's maybe being able to take Steven Keaton down a notch, which is always fun to watch.
To help me be more accepting of, just somebody for who they were and for their heart instead of their, even I had those lessons to learn as a very liberal, accepting character is don't accept somebody, accept somebody for not how much I love them, but how much they care for my daughter, you know?
Yeah, so many awesome just values and life lessons in the show. That's why I ran for so long and why we still love it. We talked a little bit about like the main recurring characters, especially some of the ones that came in. But my gosh, the list of guest stars over the season, I'm just going to rattle them off because it's amazing. River Phoenix, Jeff Cohen, Corey Feldman, Tom Hanks, Martha Plimpton, Will Wheaton, David Faustino, Gina Davis, Crispin Glover. I mean, you can go on and on. Craig Moore, who's watching on Facebook, was wondering, was there a favorite guest star moment out of all these? And I know I'm giving you a long list of amazing people and having you pick a favorite guest star or memory from the show for all those amazing cast members that came on throughout the seasons.
Well, the first one that jumps to mind for me would be Tom Hanks because he already had such a following from Bosom Buddies.
Sure. And
I don't know if he did films by then, but he came in playing Elyse's brother, and it was just so funny. He created this whole relationship. He was the uncle to Alex, and they had a funny story going on. And the truth is that he was in 2 episodes, and my oldest daughter, had a terrible accident during the first week of the first show we did. And so when we shot the show on Friday evening of that week, I really wasn't emotionally present. So my regret is that I remember so little of what happened in that show. And I thought it was so funny in the rehearsals. But when we got to that night, I don't have any recollection. I haven't seen it. But he was just wonderful and generous, strong performance.
It's very difficult for people to come in again, like I was talking about Scott Valentine, for people to come into an established show. We're there every week. It's a popular show, and it could be a little intimidating to guests. Yeah. But we had some really quality people who jumped right into it. You mentioned Gina Davis. That sticks out for me because that was so popular. It was another 2-part show, and she was a completely inept human being in the show. She was hired as a maid, and she could do nothing wrong. And so there were a lot of wonderful. As much as I loved comedy from character, there were a lot of crazy sight gags in that thing too. Toasters that didn't work, that projected pieces of toast across the room, and tables that were too short because she had cut off the legs. I mean, she had made faucets that she had fixed that sprayed in our faces. I mean, it was pure Lucille Ball comedy. But the thing she did, everything went wrong. But that was fun. It was very visual comedy in those cases with Gina, and she was just, of course, lovely to work with. Again, before she had done some of her biggest work, and with Tom Hanks, of course, had done Bosom Buddies, but that was prior to doing Big, which was his, where he vaulted into some stardom.
What was it like? This question comes from Acra23. We talked a little bit about how the show not reinvented itself. It was the same show, but, brought in some new characters. And obviously you get a new child, halfway through with Brian Bonsall coming in. What was that sort of pivot like at that moment in time, being being like, oh, you have another child here?
Well, Meredith, that was a result of the fact that Meredith was in fact pregnant in real life, and we had to account for that, didn't we, Meredith?
It'd have been odd not to.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'd have thought it was just a goiter.
Yes, probably. Yeah. For a while we just had a baby.
For sure.
We had 2 babies that we'd switch back and forth, but that did bring about a very funny game that Michael started playing. When you clip your
Michael,
you.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just
with the clip with the clothespins on everybody.
Oh,
it was around that time you started. None of this is going to sound funny here, but it was so funny during our rehearsal. We'd be playing a scene, and someone would turn around, and all of a sudden you see, they have a clothespin hanging in from their back, maybe just one, maybe more. And it was because Michael has been doing this to people, and they don't even know they have this stuff hanging from him. And I just remember the time when someone turned around because they were holding the doll that substituted for the baby during rehearsal. He turned around, and the doll has something hanging from it. Well, that becomes riotous laughter, which right now you just go, well, I don't see it. But
that's right. I had I tried to get as many clip clothespins on people on the backs of their clothing, and they didn't know they had them on.
It's hilarious.
That's what we were reduced to.
I must say that one of the funnest times one of the nicest remembrances I have is from time to time working with Meredith, who, when she started laughing, could not be stopped. When something struck her as funny, I mean, the tears would be falling. She'd be bent over, and we just have to stop everything and it was great to see, because there's nothing quite as lovely as laughter in a world where there are many times way too many tears. And to see somebody lose themselves in laughter the way Meredith did, I never lost myself that way. You just completely went round the bend. I love that.
Well, as I said, it was so many times, it would just be my mistakes. I'd make a mistake, or you would start me laughing. You'd make fun of my teeth, as if I had these big teeth and calling me like a rabbit or something. And I would be playing a serious scene with him, eye to eye, and he's going, which was funny at those days. I'm never doing that again. Okay. No.
Well, we can see. We
did laugh a lot at each other's expense. Sorry, Mike.
Yes.
No. I was just going to reflect on, I think that's, again, what made the show so powerful was your all's acting relationship as two people in love. And it definitely came across and exuded itself through the TV screen. So thank you again for both your amazing performances. I think that's really what brought the show to life. I'd love to bring up some, the show ended, and I think Gary, it was at the height of its popularity, was doing really well. And Gary decided, hey, we're done. We're moving on from this, which I think is very admirable. I think a lot of shows go on too long, you know what I mean? And overstay their welcome.
I agree.
So to leave on top is great. But a specific question from Ann Bostic watching on Facebook was, how was that? How was the end of the show? Were you ready to move on at that time? And, was it bittersweet? And, just some reflection on the show ending.
Meredith?
Well, I will tell you, my memory of this was that we came in, we were all kind of dreading, I think there was some upside. We were looking forward in a way to have something be different, but to walk away from this was very difficult. And so the Monday morning of our last week, we got the script, and it was awful. Do you remember this, Michael? It was just
I don't remember it being
awful.
Okay.
What I remember, it was like, wait a minute. This is supposed to sum up our 7 years. Yeah. We want to see our relationships and our love and what our loss is here and what's changing and what we're going to be facing here. And none of that was reflected. And so we'd have to learn these scenes, and it was too long, and we had to learn these scenes and mount them. And I think on Tuesday we'd mounted it and walked around, and they'd send rewrites of scenes in, and it was like, no, it's not right. It's just not right. It just felt empty, and it was just like meaningless words we were saying to each other. And we suffered during the whole week. Thursday we had to give us another rewrite, and we did the camera blocking day, right. And we plowed through the whole show, getting this set for camera with words. I mean, I was just beside myself. I didn't know how we were going to do that. Are we really going to go out with something like this that does not speak to any of what has been the sum of our experience? And then, and the writers agreed, and they said that they were having a hard time. And
I think they were having a hard time saying goodbye themselves. They didn't want to do it in some ways. And that was funny, because I didn't look at it from their point of view either. All I was thinking was they were letting us down so badly. And then we would do is we taped on Fridays. We would come in, we rehearse, but then we would tape it all afternoon, and then we would do it in front of a live audience that night. Mm. And when we came in on Friday, that script they gave us was incredible. It was really the summation of everything you wanted. Of how much we cared, what Alex going after college was going to feel like for us, what that sense of loss and separation is like. It was really moving. It was really quite extraordinary. Maybe it's because that last script is so good that I don't remember the first 4 days. Maybe I'd block that out, because I remember it being a very effective episode and, very touching. It was a little hard for everybody. I certainly had mixed emotions. There was a part of me that loved what I was doing and yet was eager to do other things. Yeah. The danger always is when you do something that's so successful. I was, you're going to be that forever. The business will never accept you as anything but that. Yeah. You're getting, put in a little box there, because television is powerful. They see you every night in their, once a week in their home in a very intimate. And these are the days before you could record a lot of this stuff. You really had to show up and be there on a Thursday night. Sure. With your family watching, Yeah. Yeah. Part of me loved it, and part of me wanted out, because maybe because of my stage background, I had essentially been an actor who played 7 characters in 1 year rather than playing one character for 7 years. And so part of me has always loved the variety and it's one of the reasons why I did not immediately, many television actors are recycled into a new series almost immediately. And I resisted all of those. There was some talk about, well, why don't we recycle you into another series? And I didn't want to do series television again. I wanted to go out and do a variety of things. My choice. I didn't necessarily want to become become a TV star or something like that. That having said, now I've done 7 Tremors movies, I don't know.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's great to hear those heartfelt stories. And I think, a shout out to all the creatives behind the show, obviously the late Gary Goldberg for going out on top, you know what I mean? And all the writers and designers.
Alan Huger,
designers.
And Michael, I love them. They were really wonderful. And they cared so deeply. We had
a great group. I can't imagine a better group. As Meredith mentioned, Alan Huger, Mark Lawrence, Michael Whitehorn, Gary, Susan Borowitz was on the show with it, I think, when we left, and Andy Borowitz, the political commentator.
For a very short time.
Her husband was one of our writers for a while, and just super people. So we were very Ruth. Oh my God,
Bader Ginsburg.
That's where I was going to. I was like,
no, exactly. I'm sorry for not mentioning, everyone.
I can't remember her name.
Extraordinary people. So, we were blessed to have a great group, and people will still come to me and say, the way it resonates today. I've had people stop me and say, when I have trouble with my family or my kids, I think, what would Steven Keaton do? And again, I have to say, I didn't write it. You have to ask those actors. I just repeated the wonderful material they gave me.
Amazing. It's interesting because these days I think we're stuck in kind of this nostalgia or reboot, bring this back, spin-off type creative world right now. There's a lot of great creative things going on, but there's also a need for that nostalgia. Was there ever, and you mentioned both being ready, being done, after being sad, but then wanting to move on. Matthew J is wondering from Facebook if there was there ever talks of rebooting or spin-offs or bringing everything back, anything like that throughout the years?
My recollection is that. Our contract went for 6 years, and they asked us to do a 7th. And I think the general agreement was we will do a 7th year if there is no effort to reboot the show.
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me. Ruth Bennett was the writer I was thinking about, who was so wonderful. Ruth was extraordinary. And yes, I will echo what Meredith said. Nobody wanted to do this again. Right. They all felt as if it was the perfect time capsule of the 80s. It was what it was. We wanted to end on top. Frankly, one of the reasons we ended was, as Gary David Goldberg, our producer, explained to us, we're running out of stories. At the heart of this is a character called Alex P. Keaton, who wants to conquer the world. We've taken him through high school. We've taken him through college. We've taken him through graduate school. Why is he still living with mommy and daddy? This is making no sense anymore. He wants to conquer the world. He's living in his parents' house. So we ran up against essentially the children getting too old to be with us anymore, and particularly this guy who wanted to conquer the world. So they said, we think we've got, at the end of the 6th year, as Meredith said, they said, we think we have one more year of stories. But after that, we're running out of things to say. It's just not making sense. The Cosby Show, of course, handled that by having their children have children of their own. And so the Cosbys became grandparents. Our children were not old enough to impregnate. So,
although you tried. Sponge bath.
No, see what a smart ass she is? No. Yeah. Our daughters were not old enough for that. And it would have been illegal. So we moved on.
There was some it's funny you bring it up, and we don't need to get into all those things, but there was some interesting topics that came on the show, some hard-hitting things. It wasn't just dealing with, it wasn't just like, oh, everything's fine, we're a happy family. They were dealing with a lot of issues that still, pervade society. I wonder, and we're almost out of time. My gosh, we could talk for hours, and this would be.
By the way, this is water. This is not Clorox.
Nice. We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to remind the fans really quickly that if you do want to purchase those one-on-one private video chats, those are happening immediately following the panel after we give our actors a break. So please, this is your last opportunity in the next 15 or 20 minutes to take advantage of those. But we're sort of getting there a little bit. This is from Lucy Ulafona, I think that's right. Apologies if I messed that up, on Facebook. She feels that we sorely need a show like this on television today. How do you think something like Family Ties would do, in given, not necessarily, we don't have to get into politics, but just the creative climate of what's on TV and what people are kind of watching and looking for? Do you think it would even exist in the way it was?
Sure. I don't see why not. You look like you have another opinion about Michael, but go ahead. Would not be attracted to a loving family unit. Great. To have an intact family is always kind of interesting to see. I remember as a child, my parents had been divorced, and I remember sitting up in my friend's car, my friend with her parents, and her father was driving and her mother was here, and I just was looking at them. You call them mommy and daddy in the same house?
Yeah.
Wow, what is that like? So people will look to that. I think I think we need that. I don't think that changes just because we're in a different century.
I agree. I think at the heart of, I first hated the title Family Ties. I thought, how boringly generic is that? And then as the show went on, I began to appreciate it more because there were so many differences in the family, how to approach life, not just the liberalism and conservatism, but, the 60s versus the 80s, times changing, music changing, all those things, that generational differences that people go through. And I thought there's so many differences, but it really is about the ties of love that are much stronger than any of the differences. And so I think at the heart of the piece, and something that would be welcomed, and I think is a crying need in America right now, is stories of reconciliation, if you will. Yeah. Stories of differences reconciled, common ground, because I think families and countries and most systems work best when they find that common ground. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, but it was a pleasure chatting with you both. We have people watching on digital streams from across the country and across the world. And I would just love to hear just a little shout out from you both to the fans watching, and then we'll wrap up there.
Thanks for signing in, saying hello.
We much appreciate it. Not only is it a chance for me to see Meredith again on a screen, it had been too long, but to say thank you for all of you, because of your interest. You keep us alive in some ways, and so these texts and these questions are most welcome. So thanks so very much, and safe times for all of you in these COVID-19 days. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourselves,
and stay hopeful.
Yes. Hope for sure. Thank you both for being here. I know I speak on behalf of all the fans that are watching and that grew up watching Family Ties, that I personally was very lucky to have a household with two parents that were very loving. But I know a lot of us grew up watching you and considering you, again, as I mentioned, as our TV mom and dad. It helped a lot of people. So I think the effect that you had is much appreciated. So again, thank you for your amazing performances. We're very excited. Hopefully Love Letters comes back. But thank you again. I hope so too. Yeah, I know. So keep an eye out for that, everyone out there. What a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us again. Please, one more virtual round of applause for the amazing Meredith Baxter and Michael Gross.
Meredith.
Thank you.
Well done, sweetie.
Michael.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. And our best to all.
Thank you,
Meredith. That was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Alex Malari Jr., and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Your emperor commands it. Thanks for watching.